It's February 20th, 2022. On 60 Minutes this evening, they're talking about, I don't normally watch 60 Minutes, Lou and Lynn do, but they're speaking on something they refer to as stricken. I've heard it referred before to as Havana syndrome, although giving it that name, then it becomes whatever. So, this thing, they said that it's hit U.S. officials or U.S. top officials or U.S. officials. I'm not quite sure the right verbiage. I watched it with Lynn, and they were talking about interference with the brain waves by sound impulse. One gentleman referred to it as microwave impulse, or I think he even said something with, indicative of the static, magnetic impulse and signature. That was what it was indicative of, or at least what I interpreted it to be. I said to Lynn, she's like, have you ever heard of such a thing? I go, yeah, Lynn, I actually have. I said, it's the same thing I got hit with when I went to the hospital around 2016, same time frame. And she was just like, and so she watched it, and the stories are, I've been stricken several times throughout my life. Complete memory wipes. I walk between here to there. And it's like that. Haven't seen the movie, but I hear it's like the movie 50 First Dates. When you leave one space and you walk into another where you left, you are completely infatuated and head over heels in love. You walk into the next space and you can't even remember that you've ever met before. Not to say that eternal flame doesn't kick back in, but for me, it's not awkward until it's brought to my attention. Whatever. So, but this Havana syndrome, or this stricken, it's actually happened on the White House steps. These are people who are involved in things. These are people who have made their way somehow through. Their parents were somebody's. They put them into somebody special education system. They got somewhere special. I did not enter the same lap of luxury as they did. I was born to a place that was already under heavy deterioration, being a member of New York. Since I have a birth certificate here, we'll go with new verbiage for this evening, since I can remember. And then once I arrived, it was very easy to tell something was wrong. I told the adults outside the house something was wrong. And then it became a lot of questions and answers as to why my mother's journey was so whatever. There's other things other than what they're qualifying as stricken that have gone on, but whatever. On this whatever. I did not want to be on 60 Minutes, but it's just easier to do it this way, I suppose. And just pretend it never happened. Although I never want it to happen again, so whatever. On the last time. First time, last time. One more, no more. So they're talking about some kind of interference wave. They received their stricken, or they're reporting their stricken with a sound. I've had sound before. The man mentioned something about a sound of crickets. But then he played back the sound, and I'm like, oh, I've heard that before. It's like reverb on one of the devices that I use, especially when I record something. I'm able to pick it up between playing it and then catching it in whatever, in a feedback loop with myself, on one of my overlay parlays. And then, I mean, I've also had, but they have some system, some network to find out if others have I mean, the gentleman even says, and I'm not going to put the whole thing on because it's extremely long, but we'll call them humans, because I don't know what levels of whatever they're in and got somewhere in life. They've all, or they mentioned that it was disorienting, and like you could still function, but also it's like almost and for me it was a separation. I mean, I know as crazy as this sounds, it's almost like the separation between worlds and being caught in between. That's really what it is for me at times. But they talk of this sound that then, I use the term throws them for a loop, but I think it's a diatom diagnostic term, into whatever. And then for some of them, it was a while to regain the function that they had before that. But they also they live in Washington, D.C., I mean, it's at Washington, but it's near the Capitol. So I say Washington, D.C. They, and they have one acronym for D.C. I have a completely other. And so, but they have hospitals, they have all of these, and they're respected in this community of intelligence that they have. I don't have that luxury. I have two parents who were already at a disadvantage in the same America. In North America. I was then born at a more advanced whatever than they were in curiosity, questions, and didn't want to be here. And so, for whatever that is in between, I don't have networks of people to contact, and the local whatever they're calling themselves at doctors. I mean, they're not prepared enough for the level of trauma that I suffered. And I dare not say brain injury, because then it comes into a whole nother area of, I want to say dumb fucking and useless psychology students. I mean, that's really what I feel that they are. They're like students of psychology, and they feed off the tit of the big pharma. So they're just like, what do you need it to be? And then they write the prescription. It's really disgusting. I have no love lost for these people. We're not talking like a trauma ward where they actually save whatever, and however that works. I'm not going there. But This is some form of group unity of multiple versions. And of course, the first thing Linda says, she goes, but you're not a U.S. official. It only happens, according to them, to U.S. officials. I'm like, right, we're Americans. It only happens to U.S. officials or people who've traveled overseas and come back to America. I'm like, right. I was like, but I told you it happened. The most useless parental unit a child could be born to.
Paramount Plus.
Since 2016, U.S. government officials overseas and their families have reported sudden, unexplained brain injuries with symptoms of vertigo, confusion, and memory loss. The CIA, FBI, and State Department are investigating a theory that some of these officials were injured by an unseen weapon. Who might?
I have not experienced what the humans call as vertigo, but brainwave interference, where you can't hold a thought, or all of a sudden you have a thought and then you lose it, but also pressurized systems, like intracranial pressure out of nowhere, where, oh, actually, no, I did have the room spin once. Nope, I definitely did.
Might be targeting Americans and why are unknown. Incidents have been reported in Europe, Asia, and Latin America, but our reporting has found senior national security officials who say they were stricken in Washington and on the grounds of the White House. The former officials you're about to meet are revealing their experiences for the first time. They were responsible for helping to manage threats to national security.
I covered any and all emerging threats, homeland security incidents domestically. So I covered whether it was from mass shootings to hurricanes to natural disasters.
Olivia Troy was home.
Now, I've been suffering from versions of this since I was young. I don't know how young, but young, like 4, 5, 6. And I'm age 43. Still, and in 2016, it was one of the most horrific attacks. But nobody's ever contacted me in an official capacity that I'm aware of in this life frame or this day label moving forward. And it becomes really difficult to find when the emergency rooms are not set up for this. Now there's a director Burns with the CIA that's on here. He said that he's putting together special teams, something with a Walter Reed Hospital. Again, these are not things that are close to where I am in New York. And New York's got a lot of different issues simultaneously going on. And no idea. I mean, and at this, I hate to say the word poverty, but at this money stipend starvation that I've experienced, it's hard to get away. Where do you go? Because I heard one gentleman, he's like, well, we relocated. Well, that's nice that you had enough money to rely on that you could move out of territory. I haven't had that luxury afforded me ever in my life.
Homeland Security and Counterterrorism Advisor to Vice President Mike Pence. She had served in the Pentagon, deployed to Iraq, served in the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the National Counterterrorism Center. At the White House, she worked in the 19th century Eisenhower
I've never even seen that building.
Executive Office Building beside the West Wing. In the summer of 2019, she was descending these stairs toward the White House when she felt she...
Some people, this area is like a second home to them. I don't even think I've stepped foot anywhere in the visitors section, let alone, I think we've driven past it.
She had been physically struck.
But it was like this piercing feeling on the side of my head. It was like, I remember it was on the right side of my head, and I got like vertigo. I was unsteady. I felt nauseous. I was somewhat disoriented, and I remember thinking like, okay, if you don't fall down the stairs, like you've gotta find your ground again and steady yourself.
That's what I was going through, in case there's hospital footage, as I was trying to ask the desk nurse for phone numbers. I was going through this, trying to find the words and I was asking for a phone, because my cell phone, the service got shut off. And I was looking for, phone numbers and to make phone calls. But the interference of whatever was going on that was affecting me, not just in the way she's speaking of. I had multiple attacks that day, almost in like a holographic universe way as I'm trying to walk through it. And there's a POV version, and then there's like a third eye version, and I'm walking through it, and I can't see where I'm getting hit from, but it's like it's pressurizing my brain waves, so they're almost like cease of function. It was a pitifully horrible attack, and I have no idea who to lean on, rely on, or report it to, and who's in charge of that level.
She steadied herself on a railing, but the piercing feeling continued as she passed by this entrance to the West Wing.
It was almost like I couldn't really process. It was like a paralyzing panic attack. I've never had that. I've never felt...
I wouldn't qualify mine as a panic attack. I wasn't panicking. I knew very well that different process, I was fully cognizant, different process was going on at the same time. And I had to move my body machine through the POV section because the like CGI section of Third Eye was somehow integrated and following, and it was, I knew where reality was, and I wasn't on anything, I didn't take anything, I was just home, and then all of a sudden it hit, but mine, she only had it on a staircase. Mine followed me to the National Guard booth. Then I went to the police station. I called Michael Hewson. I hung up with Michael Hewson because I didn't even know how to process or say what I was going through. And then I went to Stony Brook Hospital. All just check-ins of places I had been while being attacked on that one night, which is on hospital record.
Never felt anything like that. And so
in the dumb fucking and useless shitbag doctor category, not like PhD important. We're talking the dumbest of the dumb psychology students from refugee camps that have like prescription pads and a pencil.
So I thought to myself, do I have a brain tumor out of the blue? Is this what
I said that to Jason, by the way.
Olivia Troy
1976.
was inside the security perimeter, headed to her car. She went down the steps, past the West Wing.
I did one of these about going near the airport.
Called
others have reported.
Those others include Miles Taylor, also speaking for the first time. Taylor was Deputy Chief of Staff and later Chief of Staff of the Trump administration Department of Homeland Security.
Your job is to oversee the roughly 250,000 men and women of the department that conduct a range of missions from aviation security to border security to cybersecurity.
Taylor told us he was hit with the same symptoms described by Olivia Troy.
It was late one night in April 2018. I'd just become Deputy Chief of Staff of the department, taking on some additional sensitive issues at DHS, and woke up in my apartment that night, a row house on Capitol Hill, to a really strange sound.
The sound that woke Miles Taylor is a common experience reported by dozens of Americans stricken overseas.
It was sort of a chirping, somewhere between what you would think is a cricket.
See, he used the word stricken. They keep using that word stricken. I'm not going to do the whole thing because it's a really long interview. I mean, it's on
Cricket or
whatever, on these, whatever, the cloud, I guess.
Pretty aggressively. And I went over to
His
my
children
daughter,
were
and I
affected.
put my head down next to her head, and I heard a very distinct sound just right there, sort of like water rushing. So I picked her up, took her.
I'm not fast forwarding to be disrespectful. I'm fast forwarding because I have a very...
The eye function as itself is completely correct and appropriate. It's the signal that comes out the back of the eye into the brain is where the problems are, and no one really knows how to fix that.
And my whole point is that these are intelligent human beings. They have and are describing their functions, but there are some people out there, and one of the other people mentioned it about things that these psychologists or the psychology profession will put it like it's pesticide. I mean, the most ridiculous things in order to make one sound crazy when they're not.
He is speaking tonight. But this past fall,
They said it happened somewhere in India. It happened also in New York, and they're reporting it also happened in Washington. I don't know, and I don't have access to anyone else to corroborate on my day-to-day in my phone contacts. I don't have people to corroborate my story. I don't have people to report to. I don't know what level of medical facility takes these kinds of things seriously, since the hospital I went to wanted to diagnose me with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. It's not what it is, and it's not at the level of human conception, and they're just very dismissive, and they destroy lives, is what the psychology department does in this New York area that I've been exposed to. And then they send drug pushers to the house that I don't want, and I tell to go away, but they keep sending them, and then have my parents threaten me if I dare get angry over some small infraction, because I try not to incite crazy, with a trip to the hospital, as if this is some hilarious game to them to frighten me with an ambulance ride. To me, it's as traumatizing as putting a gun to my head.
We're also making progress on the investigative side as well.
progress on the investigative side came this month with a report on the nature of the brain injury.
What we're hearing about now is
Dr. David Relman helped lead 2 government panels that investigated the injuries. He's a professor of medicine at Stanford University.
what we found was, we thought, clear evidence of an injury to the auditory and vestibular system of the brain. Everything starting with the inner ear, where humans perceive sound and sense balance, and then translate those perceptions into brain electrical signals.
Dr. Relman's committees focused on one subset of patients whose experiences seemed
And that's what I'm having problems with in the New York area is the electricity and the unconditioned effects of traveling electricity. It's not conducting itself in a manner that feels safe at times. But again, I don't know where to report that level of information to.
officials we spoke with said the sound, or a feeling of pressure, came from one direction and focused in one location.
It was a continued.
But this helps to corroborate what I've already experienced because they have some professional following or network. It's more difficult when you're attacked and you know you're not crazy, but you don't know what level. NYPD doesn't. I mean, I wouldn't even know what to say to them. It's not something that they handle. And the hospital doesn't know how to handle it or didn't handle it properly. I mean, I asked for national security, NSA, CIA, FBI. I asked for these things, and then Lou and Linda made fun of me. And then I got locked away for 2 weeks. Perfectly fine. Passed my drug test. I wasn't on anything. But they locked me away for 2 weeks on psychiatric hold. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, Solar System, Milky Way, Universe. Galaxy is broken. It's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.